and I would like to call this meeting of the Chula Vista Planning Commission to order. In the interest of public health and safety and pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, members of the Planning Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the executive order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in council chambers. The city launched the virtual commenting portal, e-comment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own homes. You can find the link to e-comment at www.chulavistaca.gov/virtual meetings. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the commissioners time to read any comments that have been received. If you have difficulty or need assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please email Patricia Salvacion at psalvacion@chulavistaca.gov and staff will assist you. Will the secretary please call roll?
Yes. Commissioner Burrows?
Here.
Commissioner De La Rosa? You're muted, Commissioner De La Rosa?
Here.
Commissioner Milburn?
Here.
Commissioner Nava?
Here.
Commissioner Torres?
Here.
Commissioner Zaker?
Here.
And Chair Gutierrez.
Present. All right, so it looks like everybody's here, huh?
Yes.
All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from October 28th, 2020. Once people are reviewed, a motion, let me know.
So move, Chair Gutierrez.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2020 meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Zaker, Vice Chair Zaker, and seconded by Commissioner Nava.
Okay, and we'll just go ahead and start the timer if we have any public comments on those minutes.
Okay. Looks like time's up, so they say. Will staff please, okay, so we already did the public comment and start the timer. That's been completed.
Yes, no public comments were received for the minutes.
Okay, so the commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners, well, there's been no comments, so there's nothing to read.
Yeah.
Um,
I will go ahead and conduct
Okay.
the vote.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Commissioner Barros,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Rosa, Commissioner De La Rosa, I have you on mute.
Just showing mute on my side. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Milburn,
Aye.
Commissioner Nava,
Aye.
Commissioner Torres,
Aye.
Vice Chair Zaker,
Aye.
and Chair Gutierrez.
Here,
Thank you.
present. All right, so it looks like all those present voted aye. Which brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 2, a request for an excused absence from Chair Gutierrez for the October 28th, 2020 meeting.
I'll make a motion to
Motion to
approve.
accept the excused absence.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Nava and seconded by Commissioner De La Rosa. I think,
Thank you. And then we'll also pause for another 2 minutes, please, for any public comments. Will staff please start the timer?
Patricia, this is Mike, city attorney. As the timer started, because it's not on my screen.
Oh, okay, let me double check 1 moment.
yeah, it took a second, but it's now at like 1:16. It's
Okay.
Okay, yes,
it's a funny load, Mr. Shirey. It's not yeah, it's kind of funky, but yeah, it's doing it. It's at about a minute right
Yeah.
now.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Right. Looks like we're going to close public comment. Or do we have any comments during that time?
No comments were received for item number 2.
All right. So this is where we can do a vote, correct?
Yes. Could you please restate the motion?
This motion is to excuse me from a from a meeting on October 28th, 2020. Anybody like to make the motion?
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion by Vice Chair Zaker,
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
seconded by Commissioner Burrows.
Thank
We
you.
already did that.
I will go ahead and request each member to
I thought we
vote
did it too.
by roll call. Commissioner Burrows,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Rosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Milburn,
Aye.
Commissioner Nava,
Aye.
Commissioner Torres,
Aye.
Vice Chair Zaker,
Aye.
and Chair Gutierrez.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're moving on to the public comment component of our board meeting. The public comment is the section on the agenda for members of the public to address the board on items that are not listed on the agenda. I'll now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear. And will staff present the display, the public comment, and start the timer.
Excuse me, Gabe, are you able to scroll over to see if the timer is just not moving?
You know, it's been kind of glitchy.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's another Gabe on the line, Commissioner Chair Gutierrez,
It's okay.
that he's running the timer. So there we go.
There you go. Looks like time is up on that item.
Yes, thank you.
So-
No public comments were received.
Okay, so we're going to close public comment. And then this is going to begin. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, status report on the comprehensive review of Chula Vista's growth management program. Staff recommendation. Okay, so yeah, do your thing, staff. Show us what you got.
Okay, hello, my name's Kim Elliott, and I'm the Facilities Financing Manager, and I'm here with Kim Vanderby, Associate Planner, who's managed the Growth Management Program for 14 years. And since we're both Kims, you may call me Kimberly to avoid confusion. Last January, at the joint meeting of the Planning Commission, City Council, and GMOC, we announced that we were going to start a comprehensive review of the growth management program. And at that meeting, the Planning Commission indicated that you wanted to be involved early in the process. So that is the purpose of the meeting tonight, to share with you the work that the GMOC has done to date and give you an opportunity to weigh in, give us your thoughts and ideas. I just want to be clear that nothing has been approved or set in stone, and this is all very preliminary. So tonight I'm going to give you a brief history of the growth management program, what has taken place since its inception, where we are today, and then walk through the work that the GMO's done to date. So in the 1980s, large-scale development began to occur in the eastern part of the city. And during that time, Chula Vista expanded its boundaries to incorporate the large undeveloped ranch lands that we call Otay Ranch. So this presented the city with significant opportunities to work with developers to plan large-scale, high-quality master plan communities. But with that came serious concern that poorly managed growth could strain the city's ability to provide public services. it could worsen traffic problems and lead to an overall reduction of the quality of life of its residents. So the city appointed an ad hoc committee to develop quality of life threshold standards. And the concept was to establish performance standards that reflected either current or desired levels of service, and then measure the effects of growth against those standards each year. So in this way, the city could, one, use the standards to evaluate whether it's going to be able to meet quality of life objectives at build out, and also monitor the standards annually as growth was occurring to ensure that they were being met on an annual basis. So in 1987, this committee defined 11 topics in a document called Threshold Standards and Growth Management Oversight Committee Policy. Then in 1988, the citizens passed an initiative called Controlled Residential Development, and that was also known as the Cummings Initiative. And that required the city to adopt documents that would ensure the timely construction of public facilities, including the public facilities and services element and other implementing documents that would assure that growth was being managed properly. So in 1990, the city adopted both the growth management element and the public facilities and services element of the general plan. In 1991, that policy was codified into an actual ordinance, which we still have today, and they added the Growth Management Oversight Commission ordinance, which set forth the rules and procedures under which the GMOC would operate. Then in 2015, the growth management ordinance was updated and an implementation manual was adopted, which set forth procedures on how to do the annual report and implement the growth management documents. Next. So since 1987, the city has adopted many programs and financing tools that ensure infrastructure and services are provided. And here's a list of just some of them. We have facilities master plans. We have plans for libraries, parks, wastewater, drainage. Each is a separate master plan that guides where those facilities will be located and the capacity issues related to those. Then we adopted development impact fee programs where developers pay for roads and public facilities, ped bridges, and parks through the payment of impact fees at the time of building permit. We also started the pretty widespread use in Eastern Chula Vista of community facilities districts, which you may know as Melrose, which is a great financing mechanism which allows facilities to be built up front instead of waiting for all the fees to be collected to be able to build something. Every large development is required to do a public facilities financing plan, which details the infrastructure requirements for a particular project and how the facilities will be phased and funded. They're also required to do a fiscal impact analysis that estimates the impact of a particular development on the revenues and expenditures of the city. And that way we can analyze whether the cost of providing services outweighs the revenue that the project will generate. We also have development agreements that set forth facilities that developers will build and the timing of those facilities. Then, as you know, we have environmental review under CEQA. We have a rigorous environmental review of all the projects. And then we have two documents that are appendices to the Growth Management Implementation Plan. That's the AQIP, the Air Quality Improvement Plan, which every developer is required to analyze their air pollution impacts, and then a water conservation plan where they analyze water usage, and plan for conservation. So all these documents that have been, and financing mechanisms and fees that have been adopted since they first started the growth management program are really what implements the growth management program. And I think, quality of life is this kind of nebulous thing, and it's probably in the eye of the beholder, but I think we can agree that the quality of life has been generally maintained or improved over the years. Next. So that brings us to today, 34 years later, after the first thresholds were adopted. We are in a housing crisis, and the city is now required to meet housing goals, and specifically set forth by the state. We have new state housing regulations that preclude us from issuing moratoriums to stop building. And that was one of the tools in the toolbox for growth management, was to be able to stop building if quality of life was being impacted. So as I said in the previous slide, we have these numerous policies and programs that require development to ensure public facilities. And the city's also nearing build out. So we're in a new kind of paradigm than we were in the 80s when all the Eastern territories began to be built. But overall, the growth management program has been successful. Next. So we embarked on this comprehensive review and tried to look at it through, instead of a lens of growth, of what does it mean to have a quality of life, a good quality of life for all residents in the city. And so staff looked at all the topics and thresholds in the ordinance and looked at whether they were still relevant and still actually effective. We also looked at the work that's already been done by the various commissions and departments. There's a lot of annual reporting and documentation that really helps us look at these different elements. So what we did was brought these subject matter experts into the GMOC meetings to present about the particular topic. And we came up with a draft list of new topics. Next. So just to refresh your memory, this is the list of the current growth management topics in the growth management ordinance. So we have police, fire and emergency medical services, libraries, parks and rec, sewer, drainage, traffic, fiscal, air quality and climate protection, schools, and water. Next. So these are 8 topics that we came up with and that we've been studying and discussing in the growth management meetings. They are public safety, housing, transportation and land use, and what I'm calling connected communities. Next. Stacy, next. Thank you. Economic development, sustainability, health and wellness, and infrastructure. Next. So now I'm going to just walk through each topic and kind of what we've learned from the subject matter experts. So public safety, what the thresholds for police and fire have been, what is the response time and are they meeting the response times? And we just felt that that really wasn't a good indication of whether how safe a city was. So we talked to Chief Kennedy and Chief Gearing and Chief Munns about that. And Chief Kennedy came and presented and shared with us that the police department's doing surveys now where anyone that interacts with the police during any incident, they are asked to fill out it's an independent survey, and that way it shows the police department how the community really feels about their policing. So we thought that would be a good thing to look at on an annual basis. We also can look at FBI statistics that talk about crime rates in different cities and see how Chula Vista compares to other cities. And then Chief Kennedy really felt strongly about keeping response times as a metric as well. Then under fire, what we learned was response times is truly quality of life, because it's really a matter of life and death, is how quickly the fire department can get to either a fire or a medical emergency. And as you know, they are bringing emergency medical services in-house, and they feel that this is going to be a way where they're going to be able to identify outcomes. Right now, with it being outsourced, they only know when the person's picked up, but they don't know what happens to them on the other end. So we might be able to get some more data from that. Next. So housing, I'm sorry, back on public safety, we used to have fire and police separately. Now I'm just combining them under public safety. Housing, totally new topic. And we had housing manager Leilani Hines come and talk to the GMOC. She went over the new general plan housing element, which I'm sure you all have been involved in reviewing. And she walked through all the new housing regulations that have been put in place by the state to induce affordable housing and also encourage new market rate housing. So it seems like quality of life, housing affordability is a big topic to look at, and how we're doing in that area, and make sure that the city has a range of housing types and opportunities for residents, and that everyone is able to have access to quality housing. Next. Transportation and land use. We previously had a topic called traffic, and thought that needed to be broader. And often you see transportation and land use combined. We had Scott Barker, transportation engineer, and Paul Oberbauer, senior civil engineer, come in and talk to the GMOC. And Scott walked through the new transportation study guidelines that you all approved last year, and council ultimately approved, that implement Senate Bill 743. And that's the Senate bill that requires that VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, be used instead of level of service, or LOS, for CEQA purposes. But what we found in talking to Paul was that level of service is still very relevant to the traffic operations folks for how they evaluate efficiency and how well traffic is moving. So they're going to continue to measure level of service. Paul also walked through a local road safety plan that they are developing right now, and should be hopefully approved later this year. And from a land use standpoint, we thought under transportation it'd be good to look at whether the city's encouraging transit-oriented development and mixed use, because that is how we really solve the VMT issues, is how we develop the land. Next. Connected communities. So we had parks and rec as one topic, we had libraries as a topic, and education. And I added, those were all separate topics with separate metrics. And I added in arts and culture because I thought that really, great cities all have a vibrant arts and culture community, and that would be something to look at and evaluate. So we had Tracy Lamb, Joy Watley, and Tim Farmer all come in and give us presentations about libraries and parks and rec. And the threshold for parks and rec and libraries has been, I think it's 800 square feet per 1,000 people for libraries, and they fall short every single year. because there hasn't been a second library built in the east, which I'm sure everyone still wants to happen.
Excuse me for a
Yes.
moment on this. Does this, I know in previous Grounds Management Oversight Commission meetings, there had been, the city of Chula Vista agreed to count other jurisdictions that are nearby, such as, I'm going to use this as an example, but the Bonita Library into
Oh, okay.
considerations regarding services. I just wanted to see if you could touch on that, that'd be great.
Okay. Maybe Kim can touch on that in a minute. I was not aware of that, and I believe the threshold has just been in the city, but that makes sense that we would look at nearby libraries that our citizens would use.
The thought was, if I recall, the thought was, the logic behind it was, is as citizens of the city of Chula Vista, we're also citizens of the county of San Diego, and our tax dollars are going through those services, and those services are also provided. So to ensure there's no duplicity, and also to ensure that, kind of like LAFCO style, like we're looking at areas of influence and so forth. I just wanted to make sure that was covered as well, because I definitely think libraries should get more love. Always, I'm a big fan. But I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at that. Kim Vanderby, do you want to? Actually, good to see you, Kim.
Sure.
First off,
Yeah, the threshold is 500 square feet per thousand. And I
Sorry.
can confirm that we have been looking at the square footage of the Bonita Library for the past several years. It's actually a very small library, so it really doesn't do a whole lot to the bottom line for the deficit that we have in square footage in Chula Vista currently. The deficit is well over 30,000 square feet. So,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
But that's a great segue, because what we were looking at is does the square footage threshold really give us an indication of what kind of service the libraries are providing? And same with parks on an acreage basis. And the current threshold for parks has really just been to measure the parks in the east. So the COVID provided us with this great opportunity to see what happens when you have 0 square footage, because all the facilities were closed. So they came in and gave us amazing presentations of the work that they've all been doing during COVID, whether it be, virtual exercise classes or library reading to the kids, mobile books, and just how they've stayed connected to the community. So I think there's something there that's definitely more than square footage that we want to look at. But Tracy Lamb, the Director of Community Services, made it really clear that he has a focus on wellness and improving quality of life throughout his department. He oversees library, parks and rec, and I think arts and culture as well. And so that's just something that's part of their DNA in that group. Education, we currently measure whether or not the public schools are going to have the capacity for new development. And what we thought we might want to look at is not as it relates to new development, but citywide. Do people have good educational opportunities, maybe alternatives to traditional education? What are our graduation rates? There could be a lot of things around education we can look at. Next. Economic development. So this is a new topic, and I understand this has been some interest of the Planning Commission. And we had a presentation by Eric Crockett, Deputy City Manager and Director of Economic Development, and Miranda, Economic Development Specialist. And they gave us a great presentation about their focus of growing a healthy, strong, and diverse economic base. And they have a focus on business expansion and retention, and an initiative right now to look at inclusive economic development. Are we creating opportunities for all residents? And then in the last 9 months, they've been focused on an economic recovery plan for COVID, in which they've been helping businesses keep their doors open, or be able to pay their rent, give them technical help on applying for some of these grants. And actually, we were able to give some money away, contribute to them as well. So I think there's a lot there to kind of measure how the city's doing in terms of economic development. Next. Sustainability. We did not have an official presentation on this. The current threshold is air quality, and a separate one is, no, it's air quality and climate protection. And I thought this just could be broadened, that we could look at more ideas under sustainability. So Kim and I will work with the staff, and they're in the process of updating the climate action plan, I believe, and look at what they're measuring already in that plan. We're also updating the AQUIP, which is the document that all the developers are required for the big projects to submit, as well as their water conservation plans. And the state is now requiring an environmental justice element for the general plan. So we will see that coming through sometime. So a lot of different ways to, I think, kind of measure how the city's doing citywide from a sustainability standpoint. Next, health and wellness. You know, the old saying, if you have your health, you have everything. That just seemed like an obvious quality of life measure that we should consider. And we had Stacy Kurz, who oversees the Healthy Chula Vista Initiative, and Dr. Alan Rodriguez, the chairman of the Healthy Chula Vista Advisory Commission, came, and both of them spoke to the GMOC. And they walked through the Healthy Chula Vista Action Plan, a focus on creating an age-friendly city. And what I learned from Dr. Rodriguez and Stacy was that for health and wellness, it's really important that people's basic needs get met. So it might be good to look at housing, whether people have access to medication and health care, food security, whether people have access to healthy food. So I think there's a lot around access and equity under health and wellness. Next. Smart city. We had Dennis Jakunga, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer, but he also oversees the Smart City program. And this has been a big focus of the city. He walked through the Smart City initiative, and what we learned is that he coordinates with all the departments to have an innovative mindset, and so he doesn't have projects himself that he manages, but he helps the other departments. One initiative, for example, being to kind of close the digital divide. Another example would be like the drones that the police department uses now. That would be a smart city, or the traffic signals that are all timed. Those are examples of things that are being implemented, but they're not separate. They're all within particular departments. So at this time, I was thinking we shouldn't have a separate smart city topic, but we may want to revisit that. Next, infrastructure. So we currently have sewer as a separate topic, water, and drainage. And we had Frank Rivera just come to our last meeting, and Frank walked through a whole road condition effort that his group manages, where they look at the condition of all paving and give it an index, and then they prioritize what streets need to be maintained. And certainly, you know, potholes is always a big issue for everyone. And so I thought that would be a good thing to look at. And they have an actual monthly report where they show how many miles of streets have been repaired and what percentage of the streets that is. He also talked about, he presented the active transportation plan, which was approved last year. You all may have seen that. It identifies and prioritizes pedestrian and bicycle routes. So now we have a whole system set forth in this plan, and it's a way for them to, since they did this in conjunction with the community and knows their priorities, as projects are being developed, we can make sure those are implemented. He also showed us, talked about sewer capacity and how they measure that to make sure that the city always has enough capacity. And as you know, the city of Chula Vista pays into city of San Diego. The sewer goes in the city of San Diego system, and we buy capacity in their system. So all the developers pay a sewer capacity fee for the amount of effluent will be discharging into the system. So next slide. That's all the 8 topics. I thought I'd walk through quickly our schedule. We started this last August, and where we started the subject matter experts coming in. We did that through January, and we have one more meeting. We have a meeting next week in February for to talk about emergency preparedness. And then we're going to go dark and not have GMOC meetings, but give staff time to kind of digest all this, come up with more meat of topics and thresholds, metrics, and present those to the GMOC possibly in April, and then really take kind of April, May, and June with the GMOC to deliberate, review, discuss what staff proposes, and also have some meetings with other stakeholders. So we're thinking of around July, August, we might be back to you with a proposed new ordinance or policy, and then on to council for approval. So that concludes my presentation. I just wanted to mention that tomorrow night's meeting, the joint meeting, Kim Vanderbee will be presenting the annual report, and that's for FY20 at the joint meeting. So we won't go into this comprehensive review much tomorrow at all, just probably present this schedule to the council. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kimberly. For my colleagues, do you have any questions regarding, this is my little one, I want to bring her out, say hi. There you go. But does anybody want to, anybody have any questions regarding to staff regarding the presentation that just took place?
Chair Gutierrez, I have a comment and question, but I think Commissioner Milburn had his hand up first. So
let's do. So these are, once again, these are clarifying questions. So so Commissioner Milburn, for a clarifying question to staff.
Yeah, I don't know if this was exactly pertaining to what the presentation was about, but I remember in a past meeting that we were trying to get on a schedule with the GMOC, with also with the budget considerations for the city council. Has anything happened along those lines, or can you speak to that?
Yes, so the GMOC used to present the report in August, and last year was the first year it was presented in January. So that's the schedule we're on now. So that is before the budget's created. So if there's anything that comes up in that document that needs to be considered in the budget, they can do that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner De La Rosa.
Well, thank you. I didn't know if you were going to go to Commissioner Zaker first, but I'd be more than happy. Thank you. Just quickly on clarifying in regards to along the same lines as the Commissioner just asked regarding the budget cycle. In regards to metrics surrounding fiscal conditions of the city, I was looking at the economic development section, but I know we have a budget that we go through that process as well, and we have those parameters. But I'm just wondering, is there anything tied into the GMOC report in regards to the Fiscal House parameters that could be measured? So when residents look at this report, they can also get a grasp of that as well.
We did not propose a separate fiscal topic. We certainly can look at that. My thinking when I looked at that was, when I looked at the questionnaire that they fill, that the finance department completes every year, it was a regurgitation of the budget. So it seemed like there really was a need to have a separate fiscal topic, but we can look at that. If you
Again,
think
clarifying comments, but just to add on to that, I would just, through the chair, just maybe possibly take a look at that. I don't know how the other commissioners look at it. I think this is a very good comprehensive document in regards to the new sections. In regards to the fiscal health, I think it would be helpful for residents or those who looked at it to have those gauges in one place for them to read it, rather opposed to going to separate documents.
Yeah.
I think that's why I would probably advocate for it. But I certainly understand your perspective of having redundant documents. But I would like to recommend taking another look at that for that purpose, the ease of reading from a resident perspective.
Okay.
And Commissioner Zaker, your clarifying questions, I apologize, sir.
No problem. I'm not sure if this is a clarifying question, but it's more of a comment. So if you're going to get into discussion, I'll wait until then.
Okay. And any other clarifying questions for staff? Raise your hand. Sorry if I don't catch your hand. Okay. I do have one quick clarifying question. A lot of these metrics may be based off of may have some things that be based off of the state. So there might be a state component, like an example from I saw under Frank Rivera under his infrastructure component. There are some metrics that affect our quality of life that may be state related or state law related or be part of the city of Chula Vista's legislative agenda. And an example of that would be kind of more geared for like the safety commission, but like the 80% rule for traffic speeds. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So basically, if the 80% of folks driving on a road are driving 45 miles an hour, then the new speed for that road, regardless of what the city of Chula Vista intended it to be, will now be 45 miles an hour. So that's a quality. So the state of Washington, the state of Oregon, both have clarification for that. And now there's a actual, and I'm using this as an example, but once again, I think it's something to look at. There's been assembly bills that have been carried over the last few years that have investigated that. But I think it's important that the reason why I'm thinking this is important for clarifying purposes is simply that making sure that there are some quality of life indicators. That's the purpose of GMOC, right? That are not controlled by the city of Chula Vista or the council or the mayor or even staff, but they're controlled by the state or other policies. So I think it's important that there's some clarification. And this is an instance in which I'm recommending additional clarification or potential change to the legislative agenda of the city. However, there's other instances that it's kind of out of your control. But the example is you all look at schools, right? You're not the Sweetwater school Union School District. You're not the Chula Vista Elementary School District. I think that those kinds of there's other indicators that exist outside of there. And though I'm just mentioning this one as an example, as time goes on, there may be other indicators that come from other areas that should be displayed.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Torres. For the chair, is that to pick up on what the chair is saying is that if you remember with Leilani on the housing element, there's a lot of state legislation with regard to housing that's going to be determinative with regard to how Chula Vista itself evolves with regard to housing. So she talked about that in her presentation, and she'll be talking about that to us when the housing element update is going to be presented to us. But for clarification, I just want to make it clear to the commissioners is that nothing has been put to paper. At this point, all the GMOC has done to this point is just had presentations by staff about these new topic areas under the quality of life schema, if you will. And that's all we've gotten. So, staff hasn't come to us with any thresholds, any proposed metrics. There's been a lot of substantive discussions among the commissioners as to what they would like to see with regard to performance metrics that may or may not be in alignment with what staff provided. So there's a lot of substantive discussions to be had among the GMOC members with staff, and that's why Kimberly had noted that GMOC will go dark. The staff will come back with some proposed thresholds and metrics, and then we'll take it from there. So, but you wanted to, again, bring this to the Planning Commission because as I had informed them through the GMOC that this Planning Commission had a particular interest on economic development. So, if anybody wants to talk about that, now's the time.
Okay, so any other clarifying questions? Actually, first off, thank you, Commissioner Torres. I think you nailed it regarding like housing element, et cetera, and other things that may come from the state. It may have an impact on quality of life. That exactly speaks to what I was mentioning. Anything else that anybody wants to clarify with staff or anything like that regarding the report? All right, seeing none, I think we have to open up the public comment, correct? Let me take a look at my notes. Okay, we're going to have a 2-minute pause where we're going to have a public to submit any final comments on this item.
Yes, will staff please display the public comment and start the timer? Chair Gutierrez?
2 minutes are up.
I did want to let you know that we did receive 3 public comments, which have already been shared with the commission.
Yeah, through your emails. I appreciate that. Okay, so with that, so the commenting period is now closed. Now this is where we get into the fun part. Now I want to hear all your comments. Commissioner Torres, I'm looking at you just because you spent so much time on this, and as our representative at the GMOC, would you like to share some more about it, more about your comments, less clarifying, more opinion? You know,
Well, no, I think I said my piece is that
okay.
as I indicated before, is that I had conveyed to staff through the GMOC about the Planning Commission's particular interest in economic development. And so I look forward to whatever comments any of you have in that regard, and then on anything else. And like I said, we've had some pretty good conversations within the GMOC, but again, it all depends on what's brought back to the GMOC by staff relative to these new topic areas and the related thresholds. That's where the rubber meets the road. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for further input. And if you guys have anything you want to convey to me individually, so I can convey it through the GMOC, by all means, you got my phone number and my email address.
Commissioner Torres, thank you for your leadership on this and definitely like grabbing the bull by the horns. It's wonderful. Looks like we have a comment by Commissioner De La Rosa. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I first off want to congratulate staff and Commissioner Torres and the GMOC in regards to this new direction that they are moving forward in regards to adding sustainability and looking at the quality of life measures. I think that is really commendable and really the right approach in terms of reevaluating those categories that we'll be looking at. I do think that it's important from a planning commission perspective regarding how these new elements, I understand the GMOC is an ordinance itself, but how these specific ordinances get either pushed through or memorialized in other ordinances that pertain to development specifically, whether it's from sustainability to recreational space to drainage and renewable energy and things that comply with our climate action plan, because those are the things that we are going to be looking at. I know from my perspective, I'm going to get very familiar with this document. So in order to evaluate the projects as they come through and looking towards how staff will move forward to memorializing this in ordinances that can be used when evaluating these projects that come before us. I believe Commissioner Torres had mentioned something in regards to housing. I didn't mention on the clarifying questions, but I mentioned in regards to the threshold of maybe one of the metrics they're using or one of the statistics would be whether or not we're meeting our RENA housing allocations as a good indicator in regards to quality of life. I do believe that was in there. And again, I looking at it, it looks like staff really did appreciate them looking at it and the GMOC looking at it in terms of the economic standpoint, the interest from the Planning Commission regarding economics. I didn't see, and I'm not quite sure where statistics would be in regards to employment or statistics of that nature in regards to the population for Chula Vista in regards to the community itself or the city, the individual communities within our city or individual neighborhoods. So it was just kind of, I don't know if someone could answer that in regards to those statistics. And then in regards to the public comment, I wanted to ask if the police had responded to, and I understand the police chief is not here, and we might get an opportunity in the future, but if they saw the comment in regards to the proportionality in regards to infractions in the population, I think they were getting to other social justice issues there, and I'm not quite sure if that comment was forwarded to the police chief on that, or if there was a discussion on that. But again, just commending staff and the GMOC and Commissioner Torres. I think this was well put together, is what I can see in regards to the sections, and I would support those sections that are in there with those added comments regarding economic, housing, and then how these would go into separate ordinances, so we can evaluate them as part of development projects that come in front of us, so we can use them to measure them, such as solar implementation or implementing of the cap, and how we can use that as a tool to evaluate the projects becoming for us. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Del Rosa, thank you for those comments. These are incredibly valuable. Commissioner Zaker.
To Chair Gutierrez. Yeah, thank you, Kimberly and Kim and Commissioner Torres on your work on this and the presentation. We appreciate it. I am in particular excited to see that economic development has made its way onto the list of topics. While I agree that we need more housing, but as most of you, I'm sure you would agree that any healthy community needs to have a balance between housing and jobs. So it has always been a challenging kind of my personal challenge, as we've had many projects come before us in the last few years that I've served on the Planning Commission and also a couple of years on the GMOC, when we have developers and applicants approach us and ask us to rezone what was once industrial, commercial, employment land into residential, but yet we really have had no tools, if you will, as commissioners to make these intelligent and informed decisions. So I'm really happy to see that we now actually have some structure around it. And I read with much interest in section 3.2 of our general plan that was approved by the City Council in 2005. In fact, there's a whole section of economic development element in there. And in particular, I want to draw your attention to this. As per indication of SANDAG or their prediction, specifically in the city of Chula Vista, they were predicting that between the year 2000 and 2030, in a 30-year span, which we are now almost 2/3, that there would be an increase by nearly 50% of job growth in the city of Chula Vista. For the life of me, I have no idea where we are with that, and I bet you if economic development matrix were part of the GMOC, and if we were to measure those annually, my guess would be that we are probably very, very short of that matrix. So as suggested by Commissioner De La Rosa, I would like to add or recommend that in terms of the matrix in section 5, economic development, that would be an line item E added specifically around jobs. I wouldn't even make it employment. I like it to be very specific around job growth, because I think we could create some matrix and to track that. And then also, as to the extent possible, as you begin to think through the specific matrix, if they could be a little more specific, instead of saying business expansion and retention, to me that's a very kind of an ambiguous, but I would like to see, at least when we get into the matrix, get into square footage of, ratio of commercial land, employment land versus residential, and especially as we go through the zoning. So in order for this document to really be a useful tool to city staff and to commissioners and developers and really to our community at large, I would encourage that the matrix be a little more specific than just inclusive economic development. Perhaps that's already in the plan, but again, I wanted to thank you for this, and Commissioner Torres, you are my best friend. I really, really appreciate you carrying this message, because this has always been one of my pet peeves. I'm really excited to see it going in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Commissioner Zaker. Anybody else like to comment on that? Anything else on a GMOC? Any thoughts, comments? Anything we can help with staff? Commissioner Nava, go for it.
Okay. Just a question. I'm a little curious on, with the pandemic and COVID, did you hear anything from your groups thinking forward on how, some of the thresholds and metrics will be affected in the future, with maybe, that the hybrid, a lot of industries and public services, I'm sure were impacted by the pandemic and are still impacted. For example, libraries, right? They have a threshold. I think it's, I think 500 square feet for every 1,000 residents. I see that maybe changing in the future, with the implementation of some hybrid models, technology and all that, maybe there's not going to be a need for that many square footage in a library, right? And a lot of this, that kind of services might change. I'm just curious if you heard anything, from any other groups planning for, although we don't know if it's going to change completely, but definitely we're going to have a new normal. Did you hear anything from any of the groups regarding, any metrics that they see changing because of this pandemic?
Kimberly, if I could just chime in on that. I think this is related to the annual report that we'll be discussing tomorrow night. We did have questions on the questionnaires regarding how COVID-19 affected the services from like March through June of fiscal year 2020. And traffic was one that was very affected by COVID. And we'll go into more detail about that tomorrow night. The metric won't necessarily change because of that. And as you mentioned, libraries has continued to do well despite the shortage of square footage. Their services have been, they've kept up very well as the recreation department. So it's preliminary, I think, to determine whether or not COVID will have a long-term effect on these metrics, but short-term, there have been some instances where things look a lot different than they did in previous years.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Kim and Kimberly.
Thank you both. Any other colleagues have any questions or any comments that they'd like to share regarding this information? Okay, so I want to do some clarification. So I kind of mentioned as an example how state law can have an impact on local jurisdictions, and I think that Commissioner Torres did a really great job of explaining how housing rules and regulations can have an impact. And staff, all of you are wonderful when it comes to understanding and being on top of all that information. So just making sure that that's highlighted or mentioned inside of the GMOC is always helpful for commissioners or city council or whoever it is that's reviewing this information to make decisions. That information is really valuable. Now, I mentioned it incorrectly, the 80th percent rule. It's actually the 85th percent rule. It's in California Vehicle Code 21400. But that is the rule where 85% of all vehicles, and that's actually currently being looked at throughout the state. So those will have potentially positive impacts on the city of Chula Vista being able to have much more control over speed limits in neighborhoods and et cetera. So those are important things for I think that the council or even planning commissions and others to kind of get a feel for how we're doing communities. I think that Commissioner Nava asked a really great question about what's the future look like with COVID. I see a lot more people using bicycles. So I think there was ever a survey this last year. You'd probably find more people on their bikes, more people walking, people they're sick and tired of being in their house. So probably walking around their neighborhood, and there might be more complaints regarding sidewalks or other kind of conditions of things. But to your point also, there's better level of service, right? So, hey, our roads are better than they were, 2 years ago. So I definitely think that the more that we can paint a bigger picture, and staff, the professional staff that's here today, the more that we can paint a picture of some of the considerations that staff thinks about, and have that be things that we all think about, I think that's just super helpful. I know that could be a lot. I will also venture the County of San Diego, that's where I work. We have what's called Livable San Diego indicators. And these are, I know that there was a mention regarding I think the director of community services wanted to do more regarding that, but I'd love to have them or whoever contact me. And the County of San Diego has all this information, and we'd be more than happy to provide these indicators. And these are indicators that have everything from how much the average person is spending on rent to that end regarding housing, to how long people are living in certain communities compared to the greater county. Right. So this is a lot of information that currently exists. And I'm more than happy to provide this to staff or direct this to my colleagues at the county that can help, my epidemiologists and other partners that can be able to provide this to City of Chula Vista staff. So that's my thoughts on that. And I think it'd be really great to be able to partner, and it'd be easy. We just give you a link, frankly, and y'all can have at it. Any other questions or comments to the Kims? Okay, Commissioner De La Rosa.
Real quickly, Commissioner, this is to Kimberly. I think with the two Kims. Was there public participation in coming up with these new categories? I imagine the meetings were public, or was this just with the GMOC?
The meetings were public. We have not specifically gone out to the public, and there really hasn't been attendance of other folks, even though they are advertised at the GMOC meetings. It's just really been the commissioners.
Okay. The only reason I mention is because when we talk about sustainability, and you had mentioned the environmental justice element, I know the big issues in regards to community interest. And
Right.
I know that it might be challenging when you talk about them from a land use perspective. People kind of get stuck in that jargon, but it might be worth it in terms of, and I know it's hard, and people, especially now with COVID, but if there's a way to get input, because I think these new categories are very, very good. I think there was a lot of thought into them, but just considering the importance of the subject, and when you talk about quality of life, and the fact that it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of public input, not for the fact that staff didn't try, just to kind of state that again, to see if there's another public round and how you might want to, if there's a way to address that, simply because of the importance of the topic, that eventually this will live within a lot of other documents that we're going to be working with as commissioners. Thanks.
Yeah, can I speak to that? Commissioner De La Rosa, is that staff was encouraged to solicit input from other commissions, like the Safety Commission, the advisory committee to the police department, other advisory committees and commissions that are out there that could give input on these new quality of life topics. So I definitely want to support your sentiment, because that was conveyed to staff that they should be going to other commissions and committees, advisory committees, and getting their input, so that way it could be then directed to the GMOC for its consideration. But also, too, I wanted to comment on what Commissioner De La Rosa talked about with regard to police and social justice. That was, for example, a discussion that we had with the police chief in the post George Floyd era, that public safety, and in particular police, if we're going to be looking at police through a quality of life paradigm, that not just simply response times need to be looked at, but other substantive performance metrics addressing social justice need to be considered as well. So what are they going to look like? That's yet to be determined, but that conversation was had.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that's important to highlight that, and I would encourage that, and would leave that in your hands as a representative of the Planning Commissioner, and the chief's hands in regards to conducting that conversation. But again, I was confused in terms of if you had recommended that staff talk to the other commissions, or they did. But if that wasn't done, I really do hope that they would, because as I understand the GMOC ordinance and how it's going to relate to other documents, and the nexus that we may use as commissioners in approving projects in regards to these thresholds and keeping them in mind, I think it'd be important for those commissioners to weigh in regards to the specific thresholds and ordinances that may come from this. So
I agree.
Any other final comments for staff? All right, well, thank you, staff, for the wonderful presentation. It was obviously very thoughtful and thorough, and I definitely look forward to tomorrow's more thorough presentation when we have it with the council and our colleagues at the GMOC.
Thank you. Thanks for your input. We will present your comments at the next GMOC meeting, and I'm sure Commissioner Torres can help with that if we miss anything.
All right, that brings us to, I guess, staff comments, item number 4. Tiffany, hey there.
Good evening. Hi, sorry, I'm sitting in the dark a little. I still need to get that overhead light put in. So one, just wanted to thank the commission for that great discussion. We're really excited about this GMOC work we're doing. And really appreciate everybody's input. And again, all of the wonderful input and leadership from Commissioner Torres on this. I mainly this evening want to take the opportunity to introduce you to our new Assistant Director of Development Services, Laura Black. Laura is on the call. I'm going to ask her to turn on her camera briefly. And Laura joined us from the city of San Diego. She has an extensive background and experience in everything from geology to environmental planning to project management. So she really brings it all. She joined us in December, right before the holidays, and has hit the ground running and has been just a wonderful addition to our team. So I just wanted to introduce you all to Laura. You'll be seeing her more in these meetings in the future. I don't know, Laura, if you have any comments or would you like to add to that?
Just a pleasure to meet you all, and I look forward to working with you.
And then just the last piece is just as a let you all know, as Kim Elliott mentioned, we are working on our new housing element. And so we will be bringing that to you. I think we currently have that on the agenda next month. So we're excited to have that conversation with you as well and get your input on that. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right. So that concludes staff comments. Item number 5, chair comments. I don't have any comments. Item number 6, colleagues, any comments from the commissioners? All right. Okay. Well, thank you all.
Gabe.
Yeah, we got a comment. Who's that? Del Rosa, is that you, buddy?
I just wanted to say congratulations again, Gabe, on your new addition to your family.
Oh, thanks. She's a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And I definitely look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and I hope you all have a lovely day.
All right. You too.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Take care.
Night.
Thanks.